The Suicide Squad came out and it is much better than the original. Here are the top 10 reasons why. Number 10, the R rating. The original Suicide Squad was PG-13 and it was a huge detriment to the movie. I mean, the premise centers around a team of villainous scumbags, but the movie itself was cookie cutter and cheesy. The Suicide Squad actually grows a pair of balls. Thanks to its R rating, there is copious amounts of swearing, blood, gore, and all that wonderful stuff. Number 9, stakes. The key thing about the Suicide Squad is that nobody on the team is ever truly safe. They might not survive the mission. This is meant to add an unpredictability to the story. Unfortunately, the original Suicide Squad was incredibly predictable when it came to who would make it out alive. All of our main characters get lengthy introductions, except for this one guy who gets added to the team a few minutes before they go on the mission. Gee, I wonder who's gonna die first. The Suicide Squad is quick to prove to the audience that nobody on the team is truly safe this time around. A lot of characters in this movie die, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time because you know that at any moment a member of the squad could get killed. 8. A better villain. The Enchantress was an incredibly forgettable villain in the original Suicide Squad. Do you know what's the opposite of forgettable? A giant intergalactic starfish. Starro is one of my favorite comic book movie villains in a long time. He's such a ridiculous concept, but at the same time, the movie actually does a really good job of making him legitimately threatening. Aside from just being a gigantic monster, Starro sends smaller starfish drones flying out of his armpits that chase people down and go full facehugger, enslaving their bodies, turning them all into a mindless zombie-esque horde. It's glorious. Number 7, Amanda Waller. In the original Suicide Squad, Amanda Waller was an absolute moron, causing more problems than she was solving. This time around, we actually get a much more practical version of the character. And they weren't afraid to make her downright despicable. Viola Davis does a fantastic job at making you just hate this character. Also, this time around, the character actually gets some comeuppance for her cold-hearted, bitchy behavior. It's pretty satisfying. Number 6, cinematography. The original Suicide Squad looked muddy, bland, and boring. The new Suicide Squad, however, actually looks pretty amazing. From the first shot of the movie, you know you're going to be in for a treat visually. Other than just being shot really well, it also has a lot of really great uses of color, and the movie is also really creative when it comes to how it presents the title cards for each chapter of the movie. Number 5, comedy. The original Suicide Squad infamously had major reshoots to add in more humor to the film to make it funnier. But overall, by doing that, a lot of the humor just felt really forced and out of place. The humor in the new Suicide Squad feels much more natural, and it has a darkness and weirdness to it that just wasn't present in the original film. Number 4, better use of music. The original Suicide Squad was a little obnoxious when it came to how it used licensed music. It literally blares a famous pop song every couple of minutes. The Suicide Squad has good songs, but it doesn't overuse them. It knows when to cue up a song and how to make sure it doesn't overshadow what's happening in the movie. Number 3, it's a standalone film. This is one of those comic book movies that you can pretty much just watch by itself and have a pretty great time. The movie very swiftly catches you up on the premise of Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad, and then our characters are just off on the mission. It's beautiful in its simplicity. There's no real ties to other movies or characters this time around. The original Suicide Squad had a plot tied to the events of earlier DCU movies, and then you have Batman showing up in it, the Joker was in it, the Flash was in it. The most there is in the new Suicide Squad is a Superman name drop. That's literally it. It's very self-contained. Number 2, a singular vision. David Ayer has been very vocal about how his original version of Suicide Squad was horribly tampered with and mangled by the studio. It just felt like a movie that was made by a bunch of different people, and overall it felt like it had no idea what kind of movie it wanted to be. The Suicide Squad knows exactly what kind of movie it is. James Gunn brought his wacky sense of humor and love for unique, flawed characters and cranked everything up to 11. It feels like a movie that had no studio interference whatsoever, and the filmmaker actually was able to make the film they wanted to make. And it turned out pretty darn good. How about that? Reason number 1, team dynamic. The Suicide Squad doesn't really work unless you care about the Suicide Squad. The team in the original movie wasn't really a team at all. Sure, they were mostly working towards the same goal, but the characters themselves didn't really have any meaningful connections to each other. In the new film, the team has a much more interesting dynamic. Bloodsport and Peacemaker have a really fun rivalry. King Shark is just this big, hungry shark man that the team constantly needs to keep in check. Ratcatcher 2 is the heart of the group who sees the best in all the other members. And while the members may have conflicts with each other, they also have heart-to-hearts, they joke around, and they go out of their way multiple times to save one of their own, simply because they're part of the squad. And that's why the Suicide Squad is better than the original. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.